Worry about being extremely better than you were 6 months in your prior position, right? And if everybody can kind of just have that mindset of like, hey, I'm not the best, but I'm better than I was yesterday. That's good for your own personal growth. That's good for your own personal efficiencies, and it's really good for your companies and the world we live in, right? That people can continuously just improve.
Welcome everyone to today's podcast, the Growth Blog podcast. And today I have, I'll say someone I work with, who will be sharing some interesting tips about his transition as well, to, I'll say, a space that is gaining more traction and more exciting every day. Um, Steven, introduce yourself. Who are you? Can we meet you?
Yeah, for sure. Stevie Sims, born and raised in South Louisiana, resident in New Orleans. Have been working with the same company that Wilson works with for about 11 years. Currently in an IDT advisor role, spend a lot of my time throughout the day deploying, building low code, no code solutions, right? Anything from Canvas apps to automations that help just continuously improve people's quality of life in their workplace, bring business value, and really just tie problems to solutions, right? As we continue on this digital transformation, and what we found is that the low code, no code technology is it does serve a viable place there. Um, so, just I wasn't always an IDT. I wasn't always a technical person. Started out my career 11 years ago in a chemicals and products site as a plant operator in a chemical unit. And so for the first 8 years of my career, I was on a mission to become the very best production operator on the planet. That was my goal. And so everything that you could imagine, or if you've seen in the movies or on TV, on YouTube, the life of a plant operator looks like, being in the field, opening and closing valves, preparing equipment for maintenance. And I was really, enjoying my career in that role. But then I started to look at different ways that I could digitally just help improve my own personal workspace and help improve my workspace for my, fellow teammates. And so I really got into like, starting to produce things with Adobe PDF and markup drawings, and started to, store those drawings in certain places that they were more attainable and shareable. And then kind of fast forward a couple years, I got invited to become part of a temporary role for a turnaround maintenance uh, project where I was tasked with being an operations coordinator to start planning, large turnaround maintenance activities. So if you can imagine, there's thousands of jobs, there's thousands of activities, there's tons of procedures that you have to be accountable for. And so at that time, I was just exposed to tons of data, right? Data that came from all over, different spreadsheets, different folders, different locations. And so I went on a journey to really learn how I can accelerate my own digital transformation and upskill to make more sense of the data that I was having to use, and just being more efficient with that data. So I tell this story all the time. I can literally remember very, very much my first digital project. I was trying to put together a ready, not ready list for the turnaround project. And it was just a basic tool that identified jobs that were ready versus weren't ready, et cetera. And it was a communication tool between two spreadsheets. And at the time, I was very much, getting into conditional formatting and doing some
Yeah.
things with macros and pivot tables. But I was still manually copying and pasting large sets of data over to another spreadsheet. And then at the time, I was literally outside in the field. It was July 3rd, 2019. And I'm doing this copy and pasting bulk transformation manual. And a colleague walked up and showed me how to use VLOOKUP. And so at the time, like if you rewind back to November 2018 was like the very first time I'd even ever saved a spreadsheet. So not very technically savvy at the time.
Yeah.
I learned VLOOKUP, and that really was a very um, I can remember learning it and then wanting to go learn more, right? It was an
Yeah.
inflection point on my digital journey to say, hey, like the more I can learn about how to make this more efficient, the more I can help other people, right? Because that was really the early days of that journey. And so just went on a mission to learn everything I could about Excel and how to use Excel to make tables and charts and do all the things in Excel. And then I can recall early August of 2021, I was, a couple years later on the Excel journey, and I reached out
Yeah.
to another colleague and I said, "Hey, look, what are your thoughts and insights on getting better at Excel?" And he told me, "Stevie, you know what you should do? You should start looking at Power BI." And that
Mm.
is the way that the world is going. That's the way the company is going. And at the time, I was very new to it. I had no idea about this whole low code, no code platform. And so I started learning Power BI and kind of fast forward a couple of weeks. For those that don't know, Hurricane Ida hit in 2021, late August, and impacted the New Orleans area significantly. And so our site in Norco was impacted and had, a lot of damage. Um, so I had went on vacation, but I was called to come back. As soon as I returned, I was put into a command center, and I had about 3 weeks of Power BI knowledge. Right, like I knew about it, I was playing around with it, but now
Yeah.
here's my chance with tons of data to put
Yeah.
something into use. And so that report, that Hurricane Ida dashboard, served as a recovery tool for the command center and help communicate the status of thousands of jobs, and really was my first introduction into how powerful we could use these low code, no
Yeah.
code tools to bring value. And so a lot more to the story, but I'll kind of pause there.
No, good. First of all, I think I like your journey because it's quite similar to mine, starting off as an operator. So I came in also in production operations. That was my role before I switched to power platforms as well. So while you were speaking, I just remembered, I think that three S's where you get to, if there is probably, I'll say disturbance, you have to, first of all, stabilize, slow down, and shut down. So I remember those principles. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk a bit about operations and then we'll go fully into, I'll ask a very simple question. Do you miss it?
I think at times I do. There's certain
Yeah.
parts of that lifestyle that I don't miss. But very much like I said for a long time, my goal in life was to become like the very best, petrochemical operator on earth. I was like dream big, start small, but start. And so I was just constantly trying to incrementally improve
Yeah.
as an operator. And I tell people all the time, like wherever you are today, whatever your craft is, whatever your mission or journey in life, like wake up every day and get a little bit better, right? So that incremental
Yeah.
change, incremental growth leads to like exponential value, right? So as an operator, as a IDT resource or wherever you are, like take that wake up every day and get better
Yeah.
approach to it. So in operations, like I really enjoyed it. Often you don't feel like you produce many things that are tangible, right? It's not like at the end of the day,
Mm.
you go home and say, hey, we made X amount of barrels and it got loaded on a barge. It's not, it's almost like a continuous run and maintain.
Yeah.
And so, but it is a high valued skill as well, right?
It is.
There
Yeah.
are really, really good expert people in operations, and I still value that today. And in a sense, I do miss the camaraderie of working as an operations team member and going through some of the upsets and unit difficulties, and
Yeah.
achieving things that we've been able to do as teams from that perspective. So in that case, I miss it. I don't really miss the nights and weekends. I prefer more of a Monday through Friday work-life balance, but that's operations. So when you hear
Yeah.
about them, you think about them, know that the plant and most of these industries run 24/7, 365. They don't
Yeah.
shut down for Christmas. They don't shut down for New Year's Eve. There are people that are in seat, in house, working through all hours of the
Yeah,
night to bring us the energy that the world needs, right? And I think there's a lot of value and something to be said of that.
yeah. For me, just a massive shout out to all production operators, because I understand the life, and like you said, it's not easy. It requires a lot of, I'll say, energy to keep going because the plant has to run, right? And just making sure we have the energy we require and all of that. Okay, so you've given us a bit of background on how your transition started. You started playing with some simple tools at first, and then as things progressed, and yeah, once you start, you just can't stop because it leads to the next, and you see what is possible, and then the next. I also started with VBA, right, writing a lot. In fact, I had a lot of applications built with VBA, and it was time consuming. I think what attracted me to the Power Platform was the ease of actually doing most of the things we had to do. Um, so, if someone wanted to start this journey as well, right? How would you advise this person to start? Because I think some people have ideas, and just the fundamental reason why we even have local development is handing people who are in the business, giving them the ability, the knowledge, the skills, the tools to be able to be productive. But I think for some people, they're still scared of that space. Like, I have no idea of what IT is all about. And now you're giving me this. No, I don't want. So, what would you say to such people? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think start with a goal in mind or a problem to resolve, and then figure out what are the tools, what is out there to help resolve that problem. Like, what are you trying to be more efficient at? What is the pain point? And then really like draw out what that looks like currently, and think about how you can apply the technology to improve or make that process more efficient. That doesn't always mean make a bad process more digital.
Yeah.
So think about those things as well. But it can be very overwhelming and very intimidating. And typically, what I tell people that I'm starting out, like that are very fresh and new to it, is like, okay, we just finished 1 hour, and I might know, an extreme amount more than you right now. And you might only have 1 hour, but that 1 hour of education, you know more than probably 98% of the workforce right now. And you
Yeah.
took that first step. Um, so getting started and then getting some momentum is typically tough because it is so overwhelming and it's a whole new universe of things to learn. But I think when you have a problem that you want to start with and you use the
Yeah.
technology and the tools to apply it to specifically that problem, that does help. I can remember um, in my journey, I was tasked with building an app before I really learned how to build my first app. And so I had to literally come back to the computer on a Saturday morning and
Yeah.
apply what I was trying to learn to build another app to building an app that I knew all about the data, and
Uh,
I was a subject matter expert on the process, right? So, a little bit to that story, right? So, my very first app that I built that went live and in production was a change management tool that helped people find stuff in the field and record the information and take pictures, and then it automated the approval process to whether or
mm,
not we were going to work on this job, based on how much it was going to cost, right? So I wasn't
okay.
100% familiar with that whole process. And so trying to go tackle that as my first app was difficult. But what I
Mm,
was very familiar with from coming from operations was our blinding process. And so I
yeah.
knew about the whole data set of all the blinds that had to go in place for a turnaround or a large scale maintenance event. So I said, hey, let me go build a blinding app and let me go work with the data that I know. Let me go work with the process I know, and
Yeah.
let me attack a problem as a learning experiment because I already knew the process and I knew the data pretty well. So that's always something to think about. Like if you want to go get started, a lot
Yeah.
of people go down the road of like, let me go pull up Cookie's company data and try, and it doesn't really apply or make sense, or like the
Yeah.
Microsoft New York taxi company financial information. It it is available and it is available data sets to learn, but it really doesn't start to make sense until you start to apply the
Yeah.
technology tools to solve your own business problems or to solve something that you want to be more efficient with in your own work-life balance. So I think that's a good first starts. As people are getting started on their journeys, there's tons of information out there. There's tons
Yeah.
of resources. Some of those maybe more at the company level than others. But as far as like the World Wide Web and all the information that's available, another thing that I often steer people in the direction of is that when you do jump into Google or YouTube, be very careful about how old the information is,
So it
because
is.
technology is exponentially changing so fast
Yeah.
that you almost have to kind of set your filters on what you're consuming. To I used to tell people good rule of thumb was anything newer than 2 years or at least
Mm.
2 years less. And now it's almost the rate of change is so fast, you got to be careful and think of maybe only consume and watch things and try to learn from stuff that's 2 or 3 months, right? Another thing is, typically on these podcasts and these discussions, we're pretty agnostic of the tooling, but particularly for the Power Platform, um, companies like Microsoft have a very good set of learning and
Yeah.
documentation. And that's always a good, proper place to start as well, because that documentation is currently being updated, and there are
Yeah.
teams of people that are working to make sure that it is true and correct. And you might find an old article or a blog post on Google or Reddit that talks about some solution that doesn't really apply to today's landscape of tools, and you got to be careful
Yeah.
with that.
Very true. I think the mistake most people make is they just want to jump into the tool, and I understand that excitement, but without understanding the problem you want to solve, your underlying data, yeah, it might, yeah, it might take you a longer time to actually comprehend and have a good hold of such tools. So yeah, now let's
What
talk AI in Power
I'll say,
Platform, or let's talk productive. Yeah.
yeah, I'll say one more thing to that, and I
Okay.
mentioned it yesterday in a speech. Um, Having a good foundation or a fundamental knowledge of data before you jump into the bright shiny
Mm,
tools. Um, I personally didn't have a good foundation of data and how to structure data and how to relate data
yeah.
tables. And so I kind of paid the price for that later on. I had to really slow down and relearn,
Yeah.
because it will make you way more efficient in how you use the tools, and it'll make the products that you produce way more efficient and sustainable when you have a good foundation of that data. So if you're brand new to data, if you're brand new to low code, no code,
Yeah.
start with learning, and having a good foundation of data first before you jump into any of the tools. I think that's really important.
I completely agree. Data, I was in an event earlier this week as well, with Microsoft, and we had one of the MVPs come to talk to us, and he said, respect the data. You really need to respect the data because even, and moving into AI, which we'll transition into, it relies heavily on the integrity of your data, right? So it's not just having the next large language model. What is it get? Where is it getting? What is the source? How is it structured? Because if most legacy systems or systems we have today that will get to infuse AI into, if they don't already have a good data model, for example, then the results might not be what you expect. Good model, but wrong results. Garbage in, garbage out is still there.
Right.
Yeah. So talking about AI and the low-code platforms, what is your perspective on this? How do you think this will impact development, and how do you think it will aid newcomers into the space of low-code development?
Yeah, so a very big question, right? There's tons of directions you could take on, and we could, go for hours and hours just on this one topic. I will say for development, things that you're seeing already in IntelliSense in the way you start to type out a function and it's automatically kind of proposing what the next line of code should be. Those bits and pieces of applied artificial intelligence or AI are there now and extremely accelerating the speed at which we can deliver these viable products. Other things like large language models that help you either debug code or
Yeah,
you could use natural language to describe what you want to do with your code, and it outputs a result that you can quickly copy and paste into your function bar there and make your filter work the way you want it, right? Those things
yeah,
have drastically accelerated the speed at which we can produce solutions, especially for somebody like me who doesn't come from like a very technical coding
yeah,
background. All I've really ever known was low code. Um, I don't know professional code. I'm on a journey now to be more aware and learn these things as I try to continuously improve my skills. But I can remember in November of 22 when ChatGPT was announced, and I was in the top first 1 million signups, and the week that they allowed people to go in there and pay $20 a month to become part of the premium plan, I was in it. And for our company, right, a lot of big rules, a lot of do's and don'ts.
yeah,
I followed them to the T, but I can speak to that. It is accelerated my ability to be able to produce solutions to problems drastically, right? And we have the data and the numbers to point that out. And
yeah,
um, for a developer, you can use this natural language to kind of help describe what you want to achieve, and it can return the values or outputs of what you needed to go and do and apply to your low code solutions. Um, so just from the Canvas app perspective and things you want to do
yeah,
there, but also in the automation space, right? It can really describe and output exactly the steps that you need to take for your automations. Um, it's not just apps and automation, but in your visual analytics, it can
yeah,
help, give you the formulas to really produce more advanced calculations that you could present back to your users. So in that space, it is accelerated what we can do and how much people can get into the low code
yeah,
environments. Because even though it's low code, it's not necessarily always no code, right? You have to have some
yeah.
information, right?
Some,
It is Copilot for a reason, right? It's not autopilot. Um, so I'll stop there and say that from another perspective, is that with the low code AI that we've been able to leverage with things like AI Builder from Microsoft's Power Platform, we are really accelerating business value based
yeah,
on the ability to apply these very low code, very intuitive solutions against real business problems. So in the space of OCR, text extraction from PDF
yeah,
documents, in the space of what we recently embarked on, which is how do we classify failure modes against text notification history, right? How do we train a
yeah,
model to recognize a long text natural language and return a result of suggestive analytics. We are being able to do that without any prior data science background, without any prior. I'm not a machine learning engineer. I'm not an
yeah,
AI engineer, but I can quickly bring a business use case and generate that value with what I feel like is one of the most intuitive, easy to learn, drag and drop, lower code solutions that Microsoft currently offers, which is the AI Builder. Um,
yeah,
and so that's been really neat. And it also, the art of the possible kicks in. It's like as we continue to move along this exponential journey, um, people get inspired and they have ideas on how they can apply it to other use cases of business problems. So it's been an accelerator of all things across the landscape, I believe.
yeah. It has definitely, even in personal productivity, right? Um, Beyond building for business, I tell people some of my posts I do on LinkedIn, I actually I use some tools to capture it, then I use AI to refine it.
Oh,
All
me
right.
too. I know, and you can tell you can typically spot it really quickly. But I'm not ashamed of it neither. Like you
Yeah,
can easily say, "Hey, look, I want to tell a story about an
yeah,
app that I just produced," and then it returns an output very eloquently. And then I could say, "Hey, throw an emoji in front of each of the header," and it spits it right back
exactly.
out. And it's like, okay, this had little to do with me. And
Yeah,
I'm validating that before I hit the button and submit, post to the page.
yeah,
It is what I want, but it's accelerated the time, and now I can be more efficient in my day, and I can go apply
exactly.
my skills and make the time in my day more valuable, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong
Yeah,
with that. A lot of people call it out that is, you're losing some uh, some authenticity, but I don't think that's the case, right? The pros and cons are there, but I think take the technology and leverage it for your business, for your personal efficiencies, and think and work on things and that are more valuable use of your skills, right? I think that's always
yeah.
been kind of the mindset of what this co-pilot stuff is.
For me, it still ties to the fundamental, I would say, concept of citizen development, which is give people tools that make them more productive so that they will spend lesser time doing that. And then they can actually spend a lot of time being more creative, being more innovative. So instead of spending, say, an hour trying to draft a post, if I can do that in 10 minutes, I have 50 minutes to probably think of better things to do or how to improve that generally.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's funny because you often get people, the naysayers and the people that challenge citizen
yeah,
development, and they'll say things like, "Hey, I don't want my engineers building tools." Okay, well, your engineer built a tool that makes all of engineering more valuable and more efficient. And if you describe the past process of your engineers writing this data down on a
yeah,
whiteboard and communicating this data from a whiteboard to a room full of people in a meeting, if that was the value that you thought your engineers should be working on Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week, is automatically the conversation is trumped, right? So
yeah,
there are people that will challenge the
yeah,
citizen development movement, but at the end of the day, I think the facts are facts, and the value stories prove that,
yeah,
like,
it
the
is.
more and more you can take people that really know their business and really know their data and their subject matter experts at their processes, and you can enable them with low code, no code technology and produce value added solutions for their own work efficiencies, their own department efficiencies.
Yeah,
It brings true value to the business, and I think it's truly a viable option for the technology. And I think what you'll see more and more as we continue on this journey is that the relationship and the the workplace of business and IT people
yeah,
merging closely and closer and closer together as this
yeah,
fusion team will become a reality, right? And you're seeing it right now, like with people myself that have swapped from a business role to an IT role, but
yeah.
still, like, I come with a lot of mindset and knowledge from the business, and now I know a lot of knowledge and mindset from IT.
GenAI.
We can kind of
Yeah,
continue to work together and partner there, and I think that's where a lot of value will really come, right? But I think it
true.
starts with enabling and empowering people um, to be able to leverage low code technology and low code tools to be able to produce solutions without having like tons of technical knowledge on things like
Yeah,
machine learning and Azure and all of these things that the whole world of data science knows about, but they really know about their reliability data and they really know about their process.
yeah,
They want to bring value, and they can leverage these tools, and we can help, bring that forward.
yeah.
So
I agree with.
it's really fun to see it as it kind of continue. You look back a year ago where we were. You look back 2 years ago. You look back, in my story in November of 18, and how fast it's changed,
Yeah,
right? But
things
to
are
your point,
changing.
the AI, the AI part of it has really accelerated the journey, and it'll
Yeah.
be amazing to see what it looks like a year from now.
Same here. I'm super excited about the future. I don't know about other people, but for me, let it come. We'll use it. We'll test it and use it to be valuable. So finally, we'll just talk on because I believe to learn things, to transition requires a way of thinking, right? Because some people have started some of this journey, like they wanted to do this, but maybe it's not going as planned. So, what are the, I'll say, foundational mindsets you feel you helped you within the process? Because when you had to transition, you really had to learn beyond what you were currently doing. That requires time, energy, dedication. So, what are some of the mindsets you encourage people to have to help them transition
Uh,
across
yeah,
different
yeah, for
careers or
sure. And
disciplines? Yeah.
it speaks to the mindset of the podcast we're here on today, right?
Yeah.
Just having this personal accountability for growth, right?
Yeah.
Like if you wake up every day and you never get better at anything, or you never make, any small incremental improvements, well then, that's okay. But I really feel like the energy transition, the digitalization transition, and just the world needs people to continuously improve things, right? And so having some personal accountability for wherever you are on your transition or your journey, um, the world is moving in this direction very fast, with or without you. Yeah. And so it could seem overwhelming to be part of that. Um, but you have to have this, like, hey, I have some accountability to get better, and I have some
Yeah.
accountability to grow. You have to have an a learning mindset as well, to say, hey, like, I'm humble. I don't know these things. I'm not going to catch up to Wilson. But that's not really my goal. My goal every day, or my goal in 6 months, is to be exponentially better than I was 6 months ago. Like, don't worry about catching up to Reza Durrani. Don't worry about catching up to me. Worry about being extremely better than you were 6 months in your prior position, right? And if everybody can kind of just have that mindset of, like, hey, I'm not the best, but I'm better than I was yesterday. That's good for your own personal growth. That's good for your own personal efficiencies, and it's really good for your companies and the world we live in, right? That people can continuously just improve. Um, it, it, but it can be very overwhelming when you're starting out,
Yeah.
right? Like, I'm not that good. I'm not as good as Wilson. I suck at this, or whatever those things are, because you see products and things that are produced at speed and at scale, and it seems overwhelming, and you will never catch up to that. But really, the goal should never be to catch up to me or to Reza Durrani. Just continuously improve and get better than you were before. And if you take that first step, and you commit the time to learning, right? And it's not gonna, they're not gonna just hand you a book, and overnight this happens, right? It's a continuous process. Like I tell people all the
Yeah.
time, you have to wake up every day and get better. And if not, somebody out there will. And so eventually, like, at some point, you will get passed up, right? Because the technology
Yeah.
is waking up every day and it's getting better. And so you have to catch up at some point to at least that pace. And you probably won't, right? Like we talked about the Microsoft documentation. I often ask people that I respect in this business, hey, how do you get better every day? And
Yeah.
a lot of them tell me, like, hey, you have to be committed to reading the documentation, to learning, to studying every single day. And really, that applies across all landscapes of lines of business, regardless if we're talking about digital technology or whatever your craft is, right? Having that growth mindset is really important. And it's more important now, as the world is constantly in this energy transition, and it's most important, especially as things, as people get fearful of things like AI, right? I think Paul said it best yesterday or earlier this week. It's like, hey, if people are worried about AI taking their job, who's not busy right now? Like, who's not extremely busy? And if you're worried,
Yeah.
you're probably worrying for the wrong reasons. Don't worry about AI.
Yeah.
We're all really busy, but we're busy for good reasons. And so you have to kind of have that approach, right? Like, hey, I want to get better for these reasons, and here's how I'm going to hold my own personal self accountable, and just take those steps forward to get some momentum going, and then continuously improve.
Hey, no, thank you. think we're already at the end of the time. I know it went so fast, but I really thank you for making our
Uh,
time. And yeah, just keep doing the wonderful work you're doing. And for our listeners, you can always visit his page on LinkedIn. And if you
yeah,
have any questions, I'm sure if he's free, he'll answer them. Thank you, Stevie, for making our time and enjoy the rest of your day.
yeah. Thank y'all.